The debate between Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris on the nature of truth captured the attention of curious minds everywhere. Watching two intellectuals struggle with a concept that is central to our lives, yet strangely difficult to pin down. They famously ended their first encounter with an open invitation for the audience to help them figure out exactly why they had reached such a deadlock. In this video, I want to take up that challenge and specifically address Jordan Peterson's confusion about truth and why the concept is so hard to pin down. Sam Harris takes the common sense realist position in this debate and sets himself against pragmatism generally. This is the correspondence theory of truth, which many people find themselves believing intuitively. In this theory, we talk of beliefs being true when they correspond to the facts. This disagreement is manifested clearly between Sam's correspondence and Jordan's pragmatism in this exchange.
You clearly have to have a conception of facts and truth that is possible to know, that exceeds what anyone currently knows and exceeds any concern about whether it is useful or compatible with your own survival, even to know these truths.
Okay, well, then I would say that I don't think that facts are necessarily true.
Here, they're talking about the correspondence theory of truth. But the correspondence theory was attacked for inadequacies that are central to the whole debate about truth. It will be helpful to review how some of these inadequacies led to development of new theories of truth. Classically, the concept of truth has been described by the correspondence theory. Again, in this theory, we talk of beliefs being true if they correspond to the facts. This statement would not only be a true thing to say, it would also be tautological to say it. However, this leads us into an immediate quandary. How do we separate our beliefs from the facts when our perspective is inherently human? We can never get outside of our own human perspective to compare our beliefs directly with the naked facts. As it turns out, the problem of determining what the facts are is just the same problem as determining what the truth is. The facts are what make our beliefs true. Facts and correspondence, then, are inadequate concepts for explaining truth. This has driven philosophers towards alternatives like coherence and pragmatic theories of truth. The coherence theory acknowledges our epistemic position that we can only really operate within our own system of beliefs. In this theory, beliefs are true as long as they cohere with other beliefs we hold. In another, the pragmatic theory of truth, beliefs are true if they work in some sense. Which sense that is, in other words, what exactly work here means, depends on the version of pragmatism. And we will see that Jordan Peterson is really offering his own version distinct from the classical pragmatists he identifies himself with. In this next clip, Jordan shows that he understands the inadequacies of the correspondence theory and endorses the pragmatist theory of truth.
Every action that you undertake that's goal directed has an internal ethic embedded in it. And the ethic is the claim that if what you do works, then it's true enough. And that's all you can ever do.
To better understand Jordan's view, let's turn to one of those classical pragmatists he references, William James. William James says, quote, "Any idea that will carry us prosperously from any one part of our experience to any other part, linking things satisfactorily, working securely, simplifying, saving labor, is true for just so much, true in so far forth, true instrumentally." William James actually goes on to clarify what satisfactorily means. He says, quote, "That means more satisfactorily to ourselves, and individuals will emphasize their points of satisfaction differently. To a certain degree, therefore, everything here is plastic." End quote. We see that William James has a very broad conception of what works, making room for subjective differences or emphasis on what kinds of ideas work. For William James, if an idea provides any utility whatsoever, then it's true. So how does Jordan's pragmatism differ from that of William James? Jordan elucidates his position.
And what Darwin did, as far as the pragmatists were concerned, was to put forth the following proposition, which was that it was impossible for a finite organism to keep up with a multi-dimensionally transforming landscape, environmental landscape, let's say, And so the best that could be done was to generate random variants, kill most of them because they were wrong, and let the others that were correct enough live long enough to propagate.
In this clip, Jordan identifies truth with Darwinian survival. If an organism is correct enough to survive, then it's true. This is where Jordan shows just how confused he is. First, Jordan misattributes this view to the classical pragmatists. As we saw, the classical pragmatists, like William James, didn't have the Darwinian conception of truth that he's arguing for. Second, we generally expect an account of truth to tell us what kind of things can be true or false. Jordan's view, however, suggests that organisms themselves are the kind of things that can be true or false. He essentially substitutes adaptive for true within evolutionary theory. This doesn't help us understand truth, it just relabels adaptation. Third, pragmatism as a general philosophy is first and foremost a theory of meaning. Pragmatism tells us that to clarify the meaning of a term already in use within a language, like truth, we need to look at the practical effects of using that term. In other words, to clarify the meaning of a term like truth, we need to look at the way in which people use the term in ordinary, everyday situations. The problem is that Jordan completely overlooks this pragmatic principle, leading him into all kinds of confusions. The Darwinian conception of truth Jordan advocates for doesn't even aim at explaining the concept that we ordinarily use. You see, what we want is not a wholly novel and imaginative definition of truth as Jordan argues for, nor an explanation of its derivative or metaphorical senses, such as in the expressions truth is beauty, beauty truth, or she is a true friend. Rather, what we want is an elucidation of the ordinary sense, in which it's true to say, the earth is round, or George Washington was the first president of the United States. This is why the Darwinian conception operates at the wrong level. Peterson's account doesn't align with how we ordinarily assess truth and falsity. We usually assess truth and falsity within a lifetime, not across evolutionary timescales. Jordan, by contrast, conceptualizes truth at the level of individuals or populations across generations. And once you put truth at that level, you run into another problem. What is adjudicated by natural selection is something heritable. But beliefs are not usually heritable, so beliefs couldn't be the objects of judgment. That's an absurd result. Here, we're not interested in the evolutionary status of organisms. Rather, we're interested in the epistemic status of our beliefs. Attributing truth and falsity to organisms by redefining the word true to take on the meaning of the word adaptive isn't going to help us understand the concept of truth already in use. Although Jordan does address the truth and falsity of beliefs and statements, he does this by haphazardly sliding between the two conceptions of truth of an organism and truth of a belief or statement. Besides this inconsistency, we've seen that the truth of an organism is nonsense and can safely be dispensed with. The truth of a belief or statement is the more viable candidate, and therefore is the one worth analyzing further. Referring back to the classical pragmatists, Jordan attributes to them his account of the truth of statements or beliefs.
The truth of a statement or process can only be adjudicated with regards to its efficiency in attaining its aim.
But if the aim of all beliefs is survival, as Jordan argues, then we have a problem. One way to understand the problem with this account of truth is to see truth's connection to meaning. A simple reductio argument brings this connection into view, and all we need is the semantic principle to do it. Number 1. The meaning of any assertion is defined by reference to its truth conditions. This is the semantic principle. It says that the meaning of a statement comes from what makes the statement true. Number 2. All assertions have the same truth conditions, namely survival. This is Jordan Peterson's definition of truth. What makes a statement true is its ability to facilitate survival. Number 3. Therefore, all assertions have the same meaning. Since all statements aim to facilitate survival, all statements must mean the same thing. This absurd result arises when we identify truth with survival. In fact, this happens when we identify truth with anything. So, does this mean that truth has some deeper metaphysical explanation? What is truth then? As the great Cambridge philosopher Frank Ramsey remarks, quote, "The answer is perfectly obvious, that anyone can see what it is, and that the difficulty only arises when we try to say what it is, because it is something which ordinary language is rather ill adapted to express." Close quote. Truth doesn't have some deeper metaphysical explanation. It's just that our ordinary language isn't well suited to express what we want to express. A full account of truth would be difficult to formulate, but if it can be done, then what we want out of it is an explanation of how our beliefs aim at truth, how we judge our beliefs, and why, if we are to have any beliefs at all, we ought to have true ones.